Hello and welcome to the 2023 Future of Work Virtual Conference. I'm Palesa Mfukeng and I'll be your host this afternoon. It's great to be here with you all. Well, buckle up because we have a jam-packed and stimulating afternoon of discussions lined up just for you, both on CNBC Africa and on the webinar, where you can also engage with us by posing questions and posting your comments. Do connect with us on social media, and of course the hashtag to use is FOW2023. Now, the theme for today's virtual conference is innovation and leadership in a rapidly evolving world of work. The future of work is evolving rapidly and is an ongoing experiment, mostly driven by technological advancements, changing demographics, and shifting economic landscapes. Innovations that were viewed as cutting edge a decade ago are commonplace today. 2 years of global pandemic changed the look and location of the traditional office environments. And while the majority of workers are back at the office, a hybrid work from home component still clings on for many businesses. Perhaps you are also streaming from the comfort of your own home. As we stand at the cusp of a new era, it becomes imperative to understand and anticipate the future of work. We actually have a little surprise for our viewers today. Now, with AI taking in so much more of an important space in the world of work, we have decided to invite Chanel AI to introduce the next item on the agenda.
As Polisa said, I am Chanel AI, and it is a great pleasure to be part of the 2023 Future of Work Virtual Summit. All matters digital are close to my virtual heart, and in particular anything to do with innovation, transformation, robotics, and artificial intelligence. Before we go into the second panel discussion for the day, let's have a look at this video on the effects of AI on workplace trends and employment, as created by Keamogitswe Mose-Pile, Amir Mukadam, and Reese Alberton.
Artificial intelligence is all around us. It is the latest buzzword that has permeated growth in global markets and hiring practices for CEOs. The World Economic Forum's Future of Jobs Report 2023, which weighs the threats and opportunities in the employment sector for the next 5 years, says artificial intelligence and technology jobs outpace every other sector as the fastest growing industry for employment. And on the commercial front, businesses are no different in their experience of shifts as a result of AI. An annual study titled CEO Decision Making in the Age of AI, released by IBM, found that African CEOs expect to realize significant value from advanced forms of AI and analytics, such as cloud computing, automation, generative AI, deep learning, machine learning, and more.
There's always a financial component of why any employer would want to go down this path. There has to be some sort of quantifiable business benefit. We talk about putting more on the bottom line. We have to be trying to put more on the bottom line in this economic climate. The World Economic Forum have predicted that by 2025, digital and AI would have reduced 85 million jobs. But at the same time, it would have created 97 million new jobs. So I think that the first emotion to anything new and anything different is always going to be fear. Historically, connectivity, access to devices, and all of those things were challenges in certain parts of Africa. But now, with its evolution around AI, other technologies are helping, cloud computing, interconnectedness, all of these sort of things are helping to make sure that people have the ability to leverage this type of technology without huge investments in infrastructure, etc. Having said that, our clients are also investing a lot in terms of growing their IT infrastructure across Africa. So this is not a European or an American move. This is a global move.
Additionally, according to global management consulting firm McKinsey & Company, middle and low-skilled jobs will decline in the future. This despite significant growth in delivery, transportation, and warehouse jobs due to the e-commerce sector boom post the COVID-19 pandemic. However, growth will be more concentrated instead in high-skilled jobs such as healthcare, science, technology, engineering, and mathematics.
AI is influencing shifts in the future of work by, we have to say the first would be the mere thinking around how people see their place in the future of work. I have often answered this question around the future of work, and it is no longer the future of work. We are living the movements day by day. Whether we see an introduction right now into how AI capabilities through automation, prediction, no matter what industry you're in, you're touched by some component. What needs to happen there is the questioning and critical thinking capabilities of human beings is now being tested.
Perhaps at this point in time, the future of AI and what it holds remains largely inconclusive. While a number of thought leaders have lauded the rapid speed at which this technology is advancing and the infinite opportunities it stands to offer, namely billionaire entrepreneur Bill Gates, who says the world should not be afraid of AI, other stakeholders remain largely critical. This as ex-Google CEO Eric Schmidt argued that AI poses an existential risk of people being harmed or killed.
What needs to happen is a better instrumental progression of how human beings ask the right questions, understand their place in the world alongside robots. We will not merely be replaced by robots, we will work alongside them.
And a special thanks to the team who put together that pack on the future of work through the lens of AI, Amira Mukaddam Kiamo Mosepele and Reese Alberton. My next panel discussion is on the topic of technological innovation, transformation and automation. Now, organizations are increasingly embracing digital transformation to stay competitive in today's rapidly evolving business environment. Now, this involves integrating digital technologies into all aspects of their organizations, from customer service and marketing to supply chain management and internal processes. Digital transformation enables businesses to be more agile, responsive, and customer-centric. My guests and I will explore the impact of emerging technologies, automation, and artificial intelligence on employment, job roles, and work dynamics.
And the panelists are Kabelo Makwane, Managing Executive for Cloud, Hosting and Security at Vodacom Business; Melvin Lubega, Chairman at Bayobab Group; Ravi Bhatt, Chief Technology Officer and Director of Commercial Solutions Area at Microsoft Africa; and finally, Andreas Brand, CEO and Executive Director for Manufacturing at Mercedes-Benz, South Africa.
And a big welcome to my panelists. We have one panelist joining us virtually, and the rest of my panel is with me here in studio. And in starting off this conversation, I want to direct my attention to my Chief Technology Officer, Ravi. When we talk about the era of AI and transformation, how is this shaping how work is done today? Your perspective.
Thank you for the invitation, firstly, and great to be here with the panelists. Let me give you some stats about why we are saying the era of AI, right? Mobile phones took about 16 years to get to about 100 million users. Internet took only 7. ChatGPT took 3.5 months. So it's here. The era of AI is here. And a couple of things which are important to know is today, all of us, when we go to work, and we're talking about future of work, are indebted with what we call it as digital debt. Information, data, SMSs, emails is going above our head. Our ability to cope with them is difficult. Any normal employee, worker, human being who actually debates and deals with these things is finding it extremely difficult. But with natural language prompts, artificial intelligence, and you talk about GPT engines and ChatGPT are making things easier. Microsoft is very optimistic that the effect it has on the society, on people, and industries, on countries, on GDPs is amazing. Now, it is going to change the future of work, because what AI is doing to people, it's making people who are good great. People are finding new ways of productivity. Actually, productivity is getting redefined. And very, very important, this optimism is coming into employee happiness. People are actually enjoying their work because they're finding work a fun thing to do. Now, if you take this or step further, as we go into the world of work and future of AI, organizations are looking at how should they skill themselves, how they should adapt this, and how does an AI-powered organization looks like. So this is how organizations are looking. They're looking at technologies, partners, to help them actually adapt and get on with this world of AI.
Now, Ravi, I want to double click here. Digital debt, what do you understand by this?
Digital debt is the amount of time you spend querying, searching, and finding information versus creating and delivering products and stuff. When the balance of that trade goes the other way, you're chasing yourself, trying to get on top of it. What if you get tools to solve your digital debt problem? That's what AI does.
Okay, brilliant. Andreas, do you agree with that? When we're looking into how AI, technology, automation is shaping the future of work, the fact that we are in digital debt, and perhaps you have other perspectives on this?
Yeah, I just try to get a different flavor into that space. If you look at the office environment, I fully agree. But we are employing thousands of people who are building a car. And building a car is a very physical process. But even in that space, we are using AI, we're using technologies. But in some instances, office work is different to shop floor work. It's different to what the dealers do when you get your car to us and we just get it back into the space where it should be when you want to keep on driving it. So wherever you go, work is quite a simple word, but it means different things to you, to the person you speak to. Coming back to the initial thing, if you look at AI, that is definitely something that will continue being around us, but we still have to keep involving our people into the process that we call work. Shop floor work, we are using augmented reality. We had the conversation a couple of seconds ago. We're using augmented reality to launch cars globally at the same time on different locations. So this is not AI, but it's technology. This is old school product, but it's future-oriented work. So that's what we try to do with Mercedes, to be on top of our people, to support them in their daily work.
And I think that's an important point, actually. And I'm going to continue on the round robin and bring you in, Melvin, because work means different things to different people, and we've got different industries represented here. From your perspective, how is AI, technology, innovation, automation shaping the way that work is done today?
It's a very valid point, and thank you, Tanya. I think it's interesting when you think of the future of work and what technology enables from our perspective. So we run a group of technology companies. And so what we're seeing in our world is a shift where paying someone for time is going to become archaic, and it's more so being defined on well-defined outputs. Because the reality is, if I can do a task in 3 hours that took a week before, I shouldn't be penalized for that. And I quite like the point that Ravi made, where I guess AI and automation is a tool that scales human potential. It won't necessarily replace the human. And so he mentioned that it takes someone from being good to being great. And so in our world, in the same vein, we see it as a tool to enable us to do more towards our mission. And so to the point that was just made, it then affects how we skill our staff, because I think skilling someone in a world where technology is a tool, AI, automation, many other tools like that, it therefore becomes a different, I guess, ambition that we target. But ultimately, we do see a shift both in not being time-based, but more so output and object-based.
Cabello, bringing you in here. I see you nodding. You're in agreement.
Absolutely. I think when we think about the use of these technologies and the transformation of work, we cannot talk about it in the absence of, in the context of a fit for future organizations and enterprises. And what we define as fit for future organizations and enterprises are organizations that embrace the 5 C's, which is using collaboration, using communication, using technology in a way that is responsible, in other words, that's safe. So cybersecurity is a fundamental underpinning of this. And connectivity, of course, is the mainstay for some of the use cases that Andreas is talking about in enabling this kind of optimized manufacturing process from an augmented reality perspective. But what's also quite key is, and what we're seeing from an industry perspective, is that organizations are also using the augmentation of machine learning, AI, large language models to be able to track and trace their assets more effectively, to optimize the use of real estate, because the hybrid ways of working are a core element of our ways of working. And of course, not forgetting the fact that the office is everywhere, and it's an office in your pocket, which is enabled by mobile devices, right? And in that context, what organizations need to be thinking about with transformation of work is, how do you bring about agility? How do you make sure that you don't take the lazy approach from a cyber perspective and just lock down the organization, but think about how you can use AI and machine learning in a positive way to enable and enhance productivity. And then last but not least, how to actually build an agile organization.
Okay, so we've got quite a few elements here. We've talked about productivity a lot. We've talked about agility. We've talked about how the workplace is shifting. And ultimately, what that makes me think of is also how it's shifting in terms of the jobs themselves and the job market. And Melvin, I'd like to bring you back in for that. How is the future of work changing the jobs that are available and also the overall job market?
So it's an interesting one when you think about the job market, because it's about supply and demand. And I think the point on Jasmine is quite direct. It's being someone in an office versus on a shop floor. What we are seeing is that the jobs that are available out there are less for rote skills, but more for higher order thinking. So in a world where there's technology like AI and automation, the importance of your work is less around sometimes doing the work, but more so architecting and composing the work. And so we're seeing a shift in that regard. But to the point I mentioned earlier, there's also a bigger shift around freelancing, where people are leaving their formal employees to rather go and freelance because of the flexibility afforded to them, as we briefly mentioned, around the automation of things. And so it's both a situation where the work is being more defined to a higher order of work, but two, what you're finding is that because the world is remote and you can work from anywhere, is a strong move towards freelancing. And so the interesting thing about freelancing is it shifts from saying you're getting paid to work X hours a day for X number of hours a month, but more so you're getting paid for this particular output. And I think that's affecting how jobs are being architected and organizations are being configured.
And isn't this shift towards freelancing also, in a way, demonstrating or highlighting that organizations also need to shift the way that they're being run? That there needs to be a lot more flexibility in terms of movement and in terms of how jobs are actually being done. And Andreas, I'd like to get your thoughts on this. How should organizations, or maybe how are organizations adapting to this, to the fact that we have employees, a workforce that can literally go and be a direct competitor in terms of employment and be their own employer with their own rules and ultimately paid for delivery only? What are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, first of all, we need to have a strong product, regardless of what product we're talking about. We are having a fantastic automotive product, but other companies have different other products which are maybe in a digital space. So you need to attract your people with something that resonates with them. Then I think you need to have an attractive workspace, and again, shop floor and office. Let's not forget our people in the dealerships, in the stores, and on the shop floor. But the pattern stays the same. You have to have a very competitive product, and you have a workforce that is motivated to be involved in that. And now you have to upskill. Now you have to properly all the time motivate, offer new tools, hybrid work options. So whatever needs to do as a company to make your place attractive. But I'm a strong believer of a strong product that the company must have to attract people and keep them attracted.
Okay. Kabelo, I'd like to bring you in on that, because you basically have both, where on the one hand there's your offices, but there's also the physical infrastructures. So how do you look at that when it comes to the intersection between technology and humans? How do we collaborate? How do we coexist with the digital space?
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting one, because in my 5C conversation, I left out the last C, which is consumer, right? And the consumer being the employer, the employee, but also the consumer in the context of your customers. So when you think about these technologies, you cannot think about them in the absence of hyper-personalization, because that's what they're accelerating now. Hyper-personalizing the work experience, but also hyper-personalizing the way you deliver services to your consumers. So bringing them together is actually enhancing the experience, and in some cases actually serving a very fundamental thing, which is inclusivity. I got that out. And effectively, when some of the populations in the work environment which previously, because of logistical challenges, and I'm talking about differently able people, coming into the office, commuting into the office and getting through all of that might have posed some very significant physical challenges. And this is just one example from an employee experience perspective. But with remote ways of working and infusing AI, technology as well as automation, etc., together with the collaboration tools associated, that experience is a much more better experience because they can do it in the comfort of their own home. And these are some of the subtle things that we often negate, but they're very important. From a consumer perspective, the granularity of what AI can achieve in terms of augmenting, search data and accelerating, insights, is phenomenal in terms of the experiences that you can deliver, for consumers, both in the financial services, retail sector, across multiple industries. Because now, no longer do I have to settle for the generic offerings, but I can get tailor-made. And sometimes we neglect to appreciate those pop-outs that those adverts on search engines and e-commerce sites. But this is what hyper-personalization is all about, and it's actually driven in the back end by these AI engines.
What I like with your 5 C's is that it very much looks at the entire landscape. It looks at all of your stakeholders and all of the elements that play into this. But I mean, we've talked, and I'm sensing a lot of optimism from all of you, including Melvin. But what about the risks? What about the challenges? What could possibly go wrong when we're talking work across the board? Our employees, our teams, our leaders, our clients, our consumers, what could go wrong?
So let me maybe talk about the fact, technology advances are at a level of an AI. AI, it's an era of AI. It's a very powerful tool, requires governance, and the risks and need to be weighed with ethics, and how do we use it responsibly. So the ethics of AI or ethics of tech is very important. What does it do? If we can promote across the organizations, across world, the development and deployment of these technologies in an ethical or a responsible manner, that's first step towards it. In 2017, 2018, Microsoft actually contributed to this whole responsible AI and created core principles on which we obviously dwell on, and we promote those principles to the entire world. What are those principles? When we talk about these technologies, they need to be fair. So there has to be fairness in the way they're deployed, that they were developed. Accountability. When you design an AI engine, somebody needs to be accountable for the decisions the AI engine is making. So accountability is very, very important as a principle. Then we go to inclusiveness. You must have heard about the risk of disinformation and biased views. So you need to make sure that when you're creating these engines and using technology, you are including and being inclusive of everybody and everything. Then comes responsibility. You have a responsibility of developing technologies which don't go out of hand, and therefore do it responsibly. A couple of days back, I heard this story about AI being told to make paper clips. Did not realize when to stop. So we need to make sure that paperclip doesn't take over the world. So responsibility is important. And then very important, and I think Sokapeli talked about this, is these techs need to be safe and people need to feel secured. That when they're using it, it is safe to use, it is secured, and therefore there are things which organizations need to put as foundations so that people don't feel threatened. There's no compete against the technology, we're not competing, and therefore, as you know, people are afraid of job losses, right? Job losses is reality. But at the same time, people are using these tools because they're making them more productive. There is more harmful biases these technologies can be used, and hence governance is important. Now, if you look in future, we will have organizations which are AI powered, right? when we talk about AI-powered organization, they need to have foundational tools which talk about all these things, so that when an employee or an organization uses these technologies, AI or any advanced technologies, they have governance on it. They use these technologies properly. We have something which we call co-pilot. It's not autopilot. It's not something which actually runs on its own, but it's a co-pilot which sits next to you, guides you through all your apps and innovations. And these technologies, therefore, because they're so powerful, they can create, they can, summarization is very easy, creation of new apps is very easy, and hence governance and assessment of an organization, where are we today? And where can we take this to our benefit is important. Then are the rules, then is skills, learning, new skills are required, aptitude, human ingenuity about how does human interact with these technologies. That relationship between a human and tech needs to be built. I call it the new relationship between AI and humans. So all of those things are important to be done first before you make a decision of what tools to use.
Okay, brilliant. Andreas, bringing you in for this one as well. What do you see as risks and challenges to the future of work?
If I make it in one word, it's disconnect. My biggest fear is that people get disconnected. Look at where we are coming from the COVID times. We were all sitting at home and all of a sudden we did our life completely digital. What was the loss after a year? Connection. If you go to complex tasks, you need connection, because I need your input, yours, mine, so we generate something bigger out of the expertise we have. The biggest threat is disconnection. So in other words, what is the challenge? Keep people connected, digitally, but also physically. Let's play with the options we have. Let's play with AI to reduce workload, to free up capacity for something more relevant. Let's go for it. So I'm not saying one or the other, but stay connected as also as a society and as a community. Technology will not solve everything, it will support us, but we must make sure also from a leadership perspective that we as a team, as a society, stay connected. Also globally, by the way. We are not alone in South Africa, we are integrated fully, to the full extent, to a global economy. So let's stay connected globally and locally. That's our task.
Speaking of globally, Melvin, I'm not sure if you're in the country right now, but I think that's a prime demonstration of how global and connected we can be. But bringing you in now to some of the elements of the risks that are being posed, what do you see as the biggest threat to, actually for leaders, for organizations, when it comes to AI, automation, machine learning, and the future of work?
And it comes down to burying your head in the sand. I think, it's very easy, especially in big organizations, leaders, to say AI, ChatGPT, and use them as buzzwords without actually meaningfully engaging with them and asking the question, how does it enable us or an organization to deliver value for our end customers and our stakeholders? I think one of the biggest risks we find, and I think I love the point Andreas ended off on connection, is as Africans, we need to leverage and contribute to the global discourse that is AI and automation. And the biggest risk is us not engaging. I was speaking to a company down in Cape Town the other day called Number Boost, and they're in the AI space. And they work with lots of large data models and training these LLMs that we mentioned earlier. And the biggest risk you have is you take an American model, which isn't trained on, let's say, African data, and try to apply it directly to a problem. I mean, I remember once came across I think it was a young entrepreneur, when they were doing research with models around face recognition. And as an African person, they had to put a white mask on for the machine to recognize their face. And that's often the unknown cost of not engaging. And so as business leaders, it's very easy to do the lip service, not necessarily engaging, but how do you take that technology and make it relevant to your customers? And ultimately, technology is a tool. It's not a panacea. It's not a solution for everything. And so once you realize that, it becomes very powerful because you can engage and disengage as and when it makes sense. I think that's the biggest discernment that needs to be played here.
Thanks for that. And what it makes me think of is also the element of security, and particularly cybersecurity. As Melvin just said, it's a tool which can be used for good and for evil. So how are organizations protecting themselves, but also doing the whole remote work, doing the global team management in a secure way?
Yeah, look, with AI expected to grow in excess of 36% CAGR, it goes without saying that the genie is out of the box, right? And what could be used for nefarious purposes by cyber threat actors could also be used to protect the organization in a similar way. So you cannot take knives to a gunfight, unfortunately, as the euphemism goes, because if the threat actors are using sophisticated large language processing models and AI-driven tools, you actually have to match that pound for pound. And for threat mitigation, particularly, you need to have the ability to trend anomalies at a large scale with very, very large volumes of data. The second, I think, challenge and threat is typically legislation trails, technology innovation. And I think, in many instances, as we've seen with cloud computing and the proliferation and use of cloud computing in general, legislation is going to play catch up, right? So therefore, topics such as intellectual property rights become quite centerpiece, right? Data veracity, to the point around, that Ravi made around, do you really know that virtual person that you're talking to is really a real person, or is it just an avatar that's perpetually driven by an AI machine? And so things like that. And there's been an interesting study also recently with Stanford and MIT, one of the most conclusive ones, which have actually shown that productivity increases for low-skilled workers by almost 35% plus, versus skilled workers, which is roughly about 15% when you integrate AI in the day-to-day execution of their tasks. So when you think about that, it goes without saying that organizations that are offshoring services or outsourcing or outtasking, etc., have an imperative to build future resilience by integrating these technologies. But in the same vein, we also need to use them in order to mitigate against any anomalies and any threats.
That's an interesting stat. I had no idea. And Ravi, I see you nodding. So I'd like to get your take on that in terms of what you're seeing.
So if I add to what Kabelo was saying, 87% of CEOs are saying that AI and technology is actually going to give us a competitive advantage. Everybody's saying it. Take one step back. Technology itself, whether you talk about fourth industrial revolution, we talked about digitalization, then we talked about cloud first, all of those things we're talking about, okay, how do I get closer to my customer? How do I empower every person in my organization? How can I optimize my operations? How can I make newer or better products? All of that was the tech advancement. Then comes higher tech, which is the AI, right? Now this tech is allowing us to do amazing things. I talked about the good to great. I'm talking about increased productivity, which you cannot even imagine. Not just at an individual basis, but at organizations and country. The latest report is that by 2020, 2030, AI-infused organizations and countries have an ability to increase their GDP by 50%. That is massive. Just imagine if Africa can take 10% of that. Yeah. Where would we be, right? Individuals, organizations, and consumers are consuming this technology very differently. Organizations are looking for insight so that they can do better work, better decisions, faster decisions, despite of the economic crisis which we go in and out of in the world economy. Employees are looking to work smarter. I loved the entire idea of future of work. We can work from anywhere. All of that requires people to become effective in working, which means productivity, means ability to work anytime and from anywhere with any device, being connected. And the last one is for any consumer. They want to be more creative. A musician wants to be more creative using AI tools. A painter wants to get better ideas. So all of these creative pieces are coming out, and work satisfaction index will definitely go up.
Yeah, most definitely. Now, when it comes to productivity, when it comes to enhancement of our efficiency and efficacy, actually, it's easy to imagine when we're talking about jobs that are in offices, when we're talking about technology, when we're talking about telecom, that's easy to imagine. Less so when we're talking about the production of physical products, such as automobiles. But you alluded to earlier the use of technology to be able to manufacture more effectively, more efficiently, and be more competitive. So curious to get some of your insights as to how that has transpired in your line of work.
I would love to tell you more details, but that's a competitive advantage for a company. But nevertheless, to give you some glimpse of insight, we have data. If we don't do nothing with it, we are stupid. We are not stupid, so we do something with our data. So we analyze, we are trying to be preventative in breakdowns, we try to get deviations in our processes identified even before they occur. And in that bigger space, I think that's where the beauty is. Also the efficiency, by the way. So being proactive, and that again comes back to our people. If we are not properly training our workforce, we are left behind. If technology is left alone and you have no person to use it, it's useless. So you have to combine technology, people, and the answer is upskilling, training, involvement, but you have to ask the right question as a leadership team. And that's where the beauty is. That's where the beauty is. So many insights that I can give you.
Yeah, but when it comes to asking the right question, there's technology that you can enforce in terms of your operations, technology with your people, technology in terms of the product, technology in terms of your marketing, for example. Where do you put the focus? I'm actually going to ask you this, Melvin. When you can introduce technology into all aspects of your organization, where should the priority be?
The priority should be where you get the most value for what you're doing. The same way when you have limited resources of capital, you decide if you want to put into sales and marketing, production, into ops. And I think the same thing goes for technology. And I'd even build on the point Anne just made around skilling. And I think it's important to be able to ask the right question and then use the tools to get the right information to make a decision or answer that particular question. And so what we're seeing is when you build a learning organization, which is empowered by a learning culture, which empowers learning within its people, you're able to ask the right question quicker and know where best to invest that particular capital or that particular technology. And so my answer, a bit of a bias, is to invest technology where it enables people to have the greatest impact, where technology has the greatest scaling effect. And so depending on which organization or what your business does, it'll be a different part of the business. But if you had to ask any business leader, what's the thing that keeps them up at night? What are their 3 biggest pain points? That will quickly underlie where best to put one's efforts. But it starts with, one, to Andres' point, asking the right question, but not only asking it at the business level, but ultimately asking that of all your employees. Because if you go back to, let's say, Economics 101, Adam Smith talking about how the miller understands the problem and therefore creates the innovation on milling. It's about being able to have an organization where people are able to contribute to that conversation around what is the most impactful thing I can do with technology in my role.
Melvin, I wish you were in the room because I have 3 gentlemen that are nodding vicariously as you're talking, but I'm going to go to Ravi for your comments on what Melvin just said.
Before I get to Melvin, I wanted to maybe add to what Andreas was saying, this whole learning and skilling. If you go back many years back, we were learning different languages to deal with technology. Mm-hmm. There was DOS commands, maybe you don't even know what the DOS commands are. Then the whole Windows world came in where you needed to click something. Mm-hmm. Then came the world of SMSs and now emojis, and we are talking of a different language. When we talk about today's tech, this tech requires language which is called prompt engineering. Mm-hmm. So we need to become prompt engineers, and this is a new tech, the new skill which we are using, because that skill can be applied. Then what Melvin was saying is you can use that skill, develop that skill, and take it to different parts of your organization and create those prompts, because these prompts actually create an algorithm which solve problems. Yeah. So that's what I wanted to add maybe to what Melvin was saying.
And Andreas, I also saw you nodding there.
Yeah, the fundamental beauty in that space is to ask the right question, but then you need to have some skills yourself, regardless of the technology. What on earth are you talking about? So also with life, and I consider myself rather one of the older ones on the table, I also learned in the last 25 years. So not to use the experience that I could gain in the last 20 years does not mean that it does not have a value, but if I combine that with next generation, young generation, creative people, if we get into that space and it comes back to cooperation, then we add the value that is in that space. So it's AI alone? No. Is it technology? No. Is it the old or the new generation? No. It's the combination of it all. And I think that's where the beauty is. So we work globally, we work technology open, and we are working flexibly. That's what I would tell my kids.
Okay, fantastic. I'm hearing that this conversation is generating a lot of enthusiasm from our online and TV audience, and I've got a few questions that have come through. The first one is, some CEOs are stuck in the past. They insist on running organizations the old way and are resistant to the hybrid way. Perhaps they do not know what it may bring. How can the future of work message get to them? Cabello, I'm going to ask you this one.
Yeah, look, I think it's interesting that question comes up. We were just having a chat about that with Andreas earlier on, and talking about this whole notion of control versus outtasking, right? And a lot of CEOs find themselves in this bimodal world of how much control versus how much to outtask and offshore even. So I think once people get through the psychological chasm, I think you can start to see that move forward a lot faster. The important thing, though, to bear in mind is organizations need to build resilience, and they need to do that in order for them to self-disrupt, but also prevent themselves from being disrupted in future. Yeah. So how can they do that effectively without embracing some of these global tsunamis? In the African context, for instance, if we talk about this being relevant, even with all our challenges, right, around literacy, around all of the things that we have, is that, you even see, from a fintech perspective, these technologies enabling farmers to trade, right, using just a mobile phone, right, and the right kind of algorithms to connect producers with markets, right? Similarly, in the fintech space, right, something that was previously an impossibility is now possible using these large analytics models to do credit assessment in the absence of a formal address, right? So you're able to use a person's social network, social standing, as well as augment all the data inputs in their cyber realm to be able to give them a loan, for instance. So these propensity models that financial services institutions are using are born out of a need to drive digital inclusion. I mean, from a telco perspective, our main ethos as one of the ambitions is to connect the next 100 million within the continent, and in so doing, we are fostering inclusion, but also creating the workforce of the future.
Yeah, and that's exactly the word I was about to use. We're speaking about inclusion now, which is what we need on the continent. It's one of our primary objectives: financial inclusion, social inclusion, access to economic opportunities. Ravi, bringing you in on this, and perhaps you have commentary as to what Cabello has just said.
Yes, I wanted to actually answer, maybe add to what Cabello was saying, and maybe a message to the CEOs who don't think work is changing. If you look at a high-powered or high-performance organization in today's world, there are three aspects to them. One is an organization which is a learning organization. What do I mean by that? They are listening to their people, they're engaging with their employees, and they are giving them tools to continuously learn, align their goal setting with the mission of the organization. So that's one part. Second part is collaboration. We talked about collaboration and we talked about convergence also. What is happening today, you require an organization which allows convergence, collaboration, learning from each other, and therefore continue to evolve as an organization. The third part, which Cabello talked about, resilience. You need to have an organization which has resilience so that it goes through ups and downs of the times, pre-pandemic, in pandemic, post-pandemic, right? So CEOs need to understand that these are the three things in today's world create a high-powered organization. If you don't have them, your employees will leave, your brand will diminish, and your profitability, I don't need to say.
Yeah, exactly. Now we've got another question, which is, while we focus on maintaining connection in order to solve complex and challenging problems, do we find that South African/African-based employers attempting to put the genie back in the bottle by enforcing a return to physical location-based offices? Andreas, I'm going to ask you what your thoughts are on that.
I would be one of those medieval times CEOs if that answer would be yes. But to come back to the initial question, I doubt that we are going to see a trend completely back into everybody in the office every day. But I also don't believe we are going to remote work day in, day out. I think the beauty is in that in between, and that in between is task-driven, need-driven, but also socializing driven. I think that was one of the lessons learned, that we cannot only rely on digital tools, because then we lose connection, coming back to what I just said a minute ago. But I truly believe that the way back to the old times is impossible, but the new time will be fluid. It will be changing as per the need, both the need of the individual, but also the need of the organization and the task, basically. Because work means we are doing something for a purpose. And we also have to have that objective in mind. So people, organization, and why we are working, what we are working for.
Okay, brilliant. I've got a question for you, Melvin, a third one that came through from our audience, which goes as this. In the context of Africa/South Africa, will embracing technological advancement be beneficial to the majority of the economically active population?
Such an important question. And how I view technology, and I think it comes on your point around inclusion, is technology and even AI can be seen as a reset. It will enable not only organizations, let's say in resource-constrained settings like, let's say, Africa, South Africa, to compete globally, but I'd almost argue that with technology, what you can see is a young, unemployed African with internet connection competing and doing the same tasks someone historically needs to have a degree and 10 years experience to achieve. And so I think by embracing technology, it actually allows us to, one, extend to where we currently are and actually creates greater inclusion more than anything else. I think that should be, I guess, the key focus when thinking about the African and South African role from that perspective. And I think it then calls us to almost think beyond our borders as Africa and South Africa, but saying, how can we compete globally? How can we offer services virtually, remotely from Africa to the rest of the world? And I think that gets very exciting.
Yeah, but the other aspect to that, which I can't help but think about, is that when we're looking at our continent, we already have a digital divide where not everybody has access to digital technology. And now we're talking about ways in which people can become even more competitive and have access to even more opportunities by means of digital connectivity. So, Kabelo, how do you view this in terms of where we're headed for the future of work and what this means for the continent?
It's amazing to think that when you put connectivity as well as a simple device like a mobile phone in somebody's hands, the amount of innovation that will come out of there. And I think we often downplay the potential, not only in solving for ourselves in the African context, but also the simple solutions that can bring about quite massive leaps forward. I talked about fintech and e-commerce, etc. Something previously thought of as impossible, but we are one of the largest fintech continents now globally, from a payments platform perspective, from a use of digital, financial services, as an example. Play that forward as well in our mainstay industries, whether it's in farming, mining, and resources, right? We are using and employing technologies to drive better yields, from a resourcing sector perspective. And in the farming community, we are also exporting some of the best produce in the global context. And this is all enabled through simple technologies, but very powerful engines that drive these technologies, such as AI, machine learning, and analytics, for example. So I think we shouldn't downplay the level of innovation and the level of ingenuity that comes out of the continent. We probably are our own worst enemies as far as marketing the ingenuity and innovation that comes out of our space.
Well, that's a very good point. Another aspect to that, I guess, and where I'd like to get your perspective, Ravi, is how can we make sure as leaders, as organizations, that no one is left behind on the continent?
Access to learning is important. What kind of learning? Making sure that we give enough opportunities for people to actually skill up. That's maybe the grassroots of it. On the continent, from Casablanca to Cairo to Cape Town, we've got immense mass of highly talented individuals who don't have access. Cabello leads the networking and access piece. He has the ability to actually get access of this technology through the network and through devices. We have an ability to actually get software and applications put on those devices very securely, so that these AI technologies or these advanced technologies, people can use them at fingertip. I even heard Melvin talk about flattening the world as far as a skill is concerned. Somebody who has a natural language generative prompt engineering skill can potentially come up with creative ideas and creative work for themselves without actually getting maybe degrees. Not that I'm saying you shouldn't go and get a degree, but you're not competing with somebody who has a degree. So I see future of Africa because of what we have. The youngest population on the planet is huge. I talked about the GDP. 10% of that GDP increase, if we can harness in Africa, we would be great. So we as an industry, we as countries need to put in this technological future. We want to put technology, we want to put skills, so that we can take every African to the next level.
Okay, thank you for that. And Melvin, I want to bring you in also on this in terms of how can we ensure that as a continent we not only leverage but capitalize on the AI movement that is happening right now?
I think ultimately it comes down to engaging with the movement. And that requires us to almost play, get familiar with the tools, be okay with failure, be okay with the mishaps that may come with using the actual tool, but almost accelerate our use of it. Because the biggest risk is us getting left behind. I really like the points that Ravi made. I think particularly comes down to skilling and access to skilling opportunities. But it really requires us, one, to embrace failure through trial and error, and know that through trial, there will be error. And ultimately, that will be a function of us trying to fail forward in our use of AI in that particular process. But I think on the other side, it comes down to us deeply understanding the tasks to be done or the problems to be solved. And so by immersing ourselves, one, in the technology, and two, in our unique or localized problems, we'll be able to find a mesh between the two of them and ultimately unlock the sweet spot.
Okay, brilliant. Now we're slowly coming to the end of this panel, and I'd like to ask you the same question that I asked my panelists earlier on. Going to the future, closing our eyes, well, not really closing our eyes, but imagining what the workplace or the future of work will look like. Andreas, what do you see?
Global, technology mindset, open and flexible.
Fantastic. Cabello, what do you see?
Deconstructed, anywhere, anytime, at your convenience.
Wow. Ravi?
Highly productive, highly creative, very energized individual, working from anywhere at any point in time, using any device, always connected.
And Melvin, your thoughts? The future of work, what are we looking at?
Compassionate with the human element, in the cloud, like myself right now, and collaborative.
Fantastic. I mean, we have had such an insightful conversation, literally starting off with the digital debt. I learned quite a bit there. Productivity and how the future of AI, automation, technology can help us build products faster, better, and become more competitive, especially important when we're looking at the African continent. We also talked about how it enables us to scale. I learned about the 5 C's, with the last C being consumer, how we engage with our clients and the people that we are actually serving through our products and services. We talked about tracking and tracing assets. We talked about some of the risks, which I'm glad we did. Because they can be scary. When we're talking cybersecurity, when we're talking data veracity, when we're looking into what AI can do. I mean, we saw an AI of Chanel, and that, I don't know if you've met Chanel, but that AI looks like Chanel. And I mean, that can open up a whole bunch of risks to impersonation and all these kind of things. We also talked about the future of jobs and how jobs are changing. We're going from jobs which require us to simply learn a skill or learn a talent or learn about a specific field to being able to work together with technology, to work together with AI, being able to engineer prompts in a way to create algorithms that allow us to do the best part of our jobs, the parts that are allow us, enable us, and require us to think, to be creative. But we also talked about the human element, and that I have to say that was one of the parts that really stood out in this conversation about how, as leaders, as organizations, this is allowing us to pay more attention to the people that form part of our organization, our various stakeholders, as well as our clients. And lastly, we talked about how the future is many things, but the future of work will most certainly allow us to step into a new level of competitiveness and opportunities for the continent. So a big thank you to my panelists who joined me here in studio today, as well as Melvin, who joined us online. Kabelo Makwane, Managing Executive for Cloud Hosting and Security at Vodacom Business. Melvin Lubega, Chairman at the Baobab Group. Ravi Bhatt, Chief Technology Officer and Director for Commercial Solutions at Microsoft Africa. And Andreas Brand, CEO and Executive Director for Manufacturing at Mercedes-Benz South Africa. Now, as we wrap up this conversation, let's move on and have a look into a phenomenon that is taking social media by storm. The world has changed a lot as a result of the pandemic, and among other things, it gave rise to a phenomenon known as, wait for it, lazy girl jobs. Nandi Gupta compiled this report. For now, it's goodbye from me, and Palesa will be back shortly, guiding you towards the next panel. Let's take a look.
The global phenomenon of lazy girl jobs.
A new trend is gaining traction on TikTok. Labeled the Lazy Girl Jobs, the hashtag has more than 17 million views on the platform. Content creator Gabriella Judge reportedly coined the term in late May when she sat down in front of a camera to film a TikTok about it.
I'm a big fan of lazy girl jobs, and let me define that. There's a whole systematic approach that you can take to applying for jobs. Stop waiting on corporate holidays to have fun and be you. Here's how you can get a lazy girl job today. Hint, it's all in the job interview.
Scores of other women have followed suit, creating their own videos of why they love their lazy girl jobs. According to them, the ideal lazy girl job is one that can be done from home, comes with a relaxed boss, ends at 5 p.m. sharp, and earns between $60,000 to $80,000 a year. Fans of the trend, mostly Gen Z, say roles such as digital marketing associate, customer success manager, and office administrator are possible options that fit the criteria. The trend has become popular at a time when the Great Resignation and quiet quitting are household terms. But what started it in the first place, and will it be a permanent workplace practice? Young women who brand themselves as lazy girls on the internet say that they are anything but. They insist that the term reflects jobs that demand sustainable salaries and flexible conditions. Society's always-on hustle culture has led many young people to be chained to their desks in order to succeed in their careers. But Judge and other women are now trying to challenge their toxic workplace cultures to achieve more work-life balance.
No, they're constantly bragging about working 20 hours or 10 hours when they're getting paid for 40.
It didn't help that the pandemic blurred the lines of work and home life, leading many workers to feel burnt out. Other reasons for disgruntled employees could be receiving too much work and not enough resources, lack of acknowledgement from their bosses, and low wages. Some experts believe that managers can tackle burnout by setting clear expectations and providing guidance to their employees. Colette Stahlbaumer, the general manager for Microsoft 365 and Future of Work, told CNBC Make It, "In this time of heightened volatility, keeping a pulse on your people shows you care and can help you make better decisions to improve your team's well-being. Ultimately, managers should be helping workers focus on their mental health and recoup some of the work-life balance that we lost during the pandemic." While Judge, who left her desk job to become a full-time content creator, urges her followers to take control of their lives and invest in building relationships and side hustles in their free time. Not everyone agrees with the lazy girl jobs trend. Susie Welch, a professor at New York University's Stern School of Business, says that Gen Z is following this trend as they're not trained to deal with the pressures of adulthood.
For me, it wasn't so much the word lazy. I think that they don't want to be lazy so much as what I generally experience from Gen Z, which is this strong desire to avoid anxiety at any cost. And actually, this is what drove me to go speak to a psychiatrist who specializes in Gen Z anxiety and say, what's going on here? And what the phenomenon is this overwhelming desire to not feel discomfort, and that includes in your career. I know. I mean, and my argument...
I understand it.
I mean, I don't want to feel it either.
I don't either.
But my argument to my students is, okay, well, sort of, you call it anxiety. Could it just be adulthood?
Others are concerned with how the trend is labeled. Whether it's the girl boss trend or this one, there's a singular focus on women in the workplace and not men. Coping with hustle culture is also something men face. According to the Wall Street Journal, they post about critical bosses and low pay on other platforms such as Reddit. Many men also choose to work lazy jobs or not work at all, but there's no TikTok trend about it. Whether or not the lazy girl jobs trend lasts, gaining autonomy and flexibility in workplaces will likely remain a concern for workers until there's a major shift in industry practices.
And that was the report on the phenomenon of lazy girl jobs, compiled for us by Nandini Gupta. As you can see, while we were watching the reports, I have been joined on the desk by CNBC Africa's editor-in-chief, Godfrey Mutizwa, who will be leading a discussion on the topic of shifting work dynamics and workplace culture. Welcome, Godfrey. What are you particularly looking forward to in your conversation?
Thank you, Palesa. I can tell you that I am going to enjoy myself. So we are talking about the changing dynamics of the work environment, and we are looking at such questions as what kind of industry is best suited for the work from home that we are seeing developing. Are we ever going to go back to 100% office type environment, or is that all changing? So really I'm looking forward to some answers, and I've got a great panel that I'm hoping that will be able to help me get to some of the answers that we require today.
Great. Take it away.
Fantastic. Thank you, Palesa. So I think, let me be frank, I sit in the school of office that says, let's go back to the office. I believe you get more done in that group environment. The vibe is good for productivity, and the sense of communion, I believe, is great. Am I and others who think like me about to go the way of that New Zealand bird? I don't know if you remember the dodo or the dinosaurs. Well, welcome to my session, where we are delving into shifting work dynamics and a new culture to be born. Let's meet the panelists.
And the panelists are Naseem Kathreda, Director for Human Capital at Regent Business School; Dion Shang, Train Analyst and Founder at Flax Trains; and finally, Vanessa Gunasilan, HR Director at Accenture Africa.
Okay, so I told you where I stand, and you have seen my panelists. I'm going to begin with Dion, who is joining me in studio today. Welcome, Dion. You heard my declaration. Yes. I'm not going to ask you to respond yet, but I want you to speak to the general patterns that we are seeing in terms of this changing work environment. And I also want you to perhaps speak to what kind of industries are best suited for this changing dynamic and which ones are not.
So let me start off by saying, we did a lot of research about in a post-pandemic world and what was happening. And we took a different view from other, say, futurist companies who were saying, these are the technologies that are driving the future of work. We went from a human aspect and we produced a report called the Lockdown Life Audit. So the springboard is really, if psychologists say it takes 21 days to alter your behavior or behavioral patterns, what has 2 years of lockdown done to that kind of psyche? So therein lies where I formulate what the future of work is going to go, is that people's priorities have completely shifted. So you were talking about, everyone coming back into the office. The previous panel was talking about, this kind of ideal hybrid, the sweet spot of that. I'm with them on that, and obviously it's more suited to knowledge workers, or what we used to call white collar jobs. But I think that's what you're going to be seeing. And I think for me, I'm quite adamant on this, so we can disagree or agree to disagree, is that the future of work is going to be decentralized.
Right. It's not going to be what we had before. It will not go back to where we were before.
No, it's not going to go back with it. Yeah.
Okay, let me bring in our other panelists. Vanessa, I want to come to you, and I am really still asking the same question out of you in terms of the general trends that you are seeing in the changing work environment and where you are seeing it most prevalent.
Hi, thank you for having me. I think, across the board, just to the previous panelist, we see it across the board in terms of people, and with the COVID-19 pandemic especially, it accelerated the adoption of remote work, and that does not necessarily mean it's targeted to a specific industry. I would say it's across industries, and it's not, again, only in South Africa. It's organizations across industries, across the landscape. So people are still looking towards that hybrid working model as a result of creating hybrid working models that have emerged, where employees split their time between office and remote locations. And again, it's definitely a decentralized model for sure, and definitely across industries and across workforces, from junior employees right up to more senior stakeholders or senior skilled workforce.
Yeah, you say hybrid, but what is hybrid? Is it 80 to 20, 60 to 40, 50-50?
So that's quite an interesting question, and I mean, we've done quite a lot of work at Accenture in terms of what does this hybrid model really mean, and we've done a lot of research, and what we call it is this omni-connected experience, and what that really means is that it's creating a complete experience of work, of feeling connected, of feeling included, of knowing that we belong. So regardless of your physical location, and I think that's important because when we are omni-connected, we use technology and human ingenuity to make sure that we are seen, we fully contribute, and have equal opportunity and experience. So to your question around, is it 50-50, 80-20? I think it depends, and not one size fits all. It would depend on the client, the type of industry you work at, the type of client you support, basically. So this comes from the digital tools we use, our physical locations, our behaviors, the cultures that we create. So omni-connectivity for me creates this shared and equal experience wherever you work from, whatever you work on, and whoever you work with. So not really a scientific, ratio around 50-50, 80-20, but it's more around what is your client expectations.
Yeah, and I think I heard that omni-connected word when I was talking to Dion. It was you, I think, or was it you? Was it not you? It might have been one of the panelists. But let me go to our last panelist, Nazim. If I can come to you as well, I'm asking you that question as well, just in terms of your general observance of the changing work environment within a very specific sector within education.
Yes, thank you, Godfrey. Thanks for having me, and hello to the other panelists as well. I have to agree with them. COVID has changed things so much. We're finding that it's inevitable. It is going to happen. The change is happening. We're currently looking at it. Some people are going to be dragged along kicking and screaming, but on the flip side of it, a number of people are actually begging for it. We're already finding that We are losing staff because we cannot provide them with a blended work type of environment. We're losing potential people that would come in. So I think it's absolutely here to stay. In our environment, I think it works a lot easier, obviously for certain functions. We've had to adapt, obviously, in the education field to move from not only just blended work, but from blended teaching as well. So it's becoming a bit easier, for people to work from home now, largely. And just to Vanessa's point, I don't think there is one particular model, whether it's 80-20, 3 days, 2 days. There's so many different varieties, and I think each one of us needs to find what works best for your particular environment, what works best for the people that are in your environment, and what sort of level of trust exists in a particular organization.
Yeah, and I think you went in part to answering the next part of my question, which was going to be the impact on jobs. So you have lost skills as a result of moving on to this new environment. I'm imagining here that somebody was told you need to be in the office, and they said, hell no, I am going to find somewhere else where people can accommodate me. Just speak in general, though, about the impact on productivity as you see it within the education sector.
Yeah. I don't think we've had too much of an impact on productivity. I think COVID allowed a lot of people, almost by accident, to realize that you can actually do a lot of work remotely. And in fact, productivity went up during COVID. People were working incredibly long hours. It had obviously a negative impact on burnout and the rest of it. So I don't think productivity is negatively impacted, provided we can manage it properly. So one of the reasons we haven't gone full out yet is we're busy trying to be able to establish how we're going to actually assess productivity. How do we know that people are not working too much and neither are they working too little? So more of an outcomes-based type of measurement of productivity as opposed to the traditional, the number of hours that you're fitting in. So I do believe that there are elements of productivity that actually are enhanced by working. And it's a fairly obvious thing if you think about it, because each of us are different. I, for example, am very much a morning person. So I can get up at 4 in the morning and be very productive. I'm less productive at 3 in the afternoon, which happens to be now. But if I've got that sort of flexibility, allowing me to maybe go and play paddle at 3 o'clock, for example, and work at 4 in the morning, will make me a much more productive person. So I think allowing that sense of autonomy, which is something that's coming through quite clearly when we look at hybrid work, does actually improve productivity, if anything.
Yeah. Okay. I'll take your point about being productive, and I get it that we need to keep you engaged throughout the session. Vanessa, I want to come to you, and I want to talk about this productivity issue. You work across industry, and I want to know whether you have seen the same sort of results that Nazim is talking about. But I also want to bring in the question of whether this is something that suits everyone, or we're talking specific individuals, as Nazim has been saying.
Sure. And I think that's a good point, because I think, the rise of remote work and the flexible arrangements has positives and negative impacts on productivity. And, I come from a consulting environment, so productivity for me is an absolute measure around performance. So for me, around the positive impact, I do think, there definitely is positive impact on productivity when it comes to increased focus. With remote working, you eliminate all sorts of distractions. You eliminate the commute around, traveling up and down to the office. The traffic, is not so great at the moment when it comes to load shedding, etc. So there is a level of focus and concentration that would positively impact productivity. In addition to the positive productivity, and I think what we've tried to create and have a balance around is the customized work environment, where employees can create a work environment that suits their preferences. And I think this, future of work is all around work preferences, and managing productivity makes sense in that sense, right? So I do also believe there's an element of negativity, or the negative impact around productivity, especially around isolation. And people find it difficult to work independently all by themselves. There's an element of not being part of an organization, not having the feeling of belonging. I've also had many conversations with our talent around blurred boundaries, and it's very difficult whilst having 100% work from home type of flexibility, it's very difficult to separate your work from home life. And it's difficult to switch off because your laptop is all the time on and you have to deliver, you focus on deliverables, and it's difficult to switch off. One of the other negative impacts for me, the communication challenges, especially for organizations, global organizations where your teams are not just sitting in the same country or the same city, but they're sitting all over the world. So I do think, it has its pros and cons, but if I had to sum it up, I think productivity is definitely a positive impact.
Okay, I'm going to leave you with a question for you to think about when I come back to you. And I want you to give some thought to how then you make that environment where you have got a hybrid type approach work in terms of creating an inclusive and diverse work environment that still is able to connect everyone together and still make the work that needs to be done together. Okay, you think about that one. Dion, you are the one who talked about the productivity aspect, and I wanted to come back so you can flesh out your thoughts in terms of the impact of productivity.
Yes.
And then after that, I want to remind you, I gave you a tricky question. We're going to come to the tricky question. Let's begin first of all with your thoughts on productivity.
All right, I just wanted to actually pick up something that Nazim did mention, and I think this is the whole thing that companies or leadership that are specifically grappling with the kind of return to office. So firstly, we are seeing globally, even just last week, I think in America, half the workforce of that worked for the Grindr app were told to return to office, and that was only for 3 days a week. But they had all semi-grated, so they lost half of their entire workforce. They just said, sorry, we're not doing that. And therein lies, I think,
when you have got an economy that's creating jobs and find another one.
But I think, yes, exactly. But I think what is really pivotal to this is what the pandemic has taught us is, or is trying to shift, is from a location-based mindset to a much more human-based mindset. So it's not about the work is what I do. This is a Gen Z mantra. Work is not what I do. It's not a place I go to. Work is what I do. And I have this conversation a lot with different companies and different leadership about, we want everybody in. So yes, you want that connectivity, you want the human interaction. Yeah. However, they are still operating on a very time-based transaction of your work. Sure. So if you are in the office for 8 hours, it would guarantee you that much productivity, which 100%. Everybody knows is not true.
Well, sometimes yes, yeah. You got your 60. What is it? 80-20. Yeah. Okay. Fair point. So let's talk then to the issue that I raised with you, and I think in part it talks to what we're talking about here. My question, for the benefit of the audience and the other panelists as well, to Dion was, what type of worker? I'm being careful here. Or what is the psyche of the type of worker who wants to work from home rather than be in the office physically? I know I'm implying a lot of things here, but I'm putting it out there.
All right. So for me, the kind of the main thrust of it is going to be your emerging workforce, your Generation Z. So at Flux, we call ourselves specialists on Gen Z because we've been studying or tracking them for the past 8 years, long before they started coming of age. You see with that workforce that mantra of work is not a place I go to, work is what I do, came from that demographic. Also pre-pandemic, they also said, I don't want a job, I want a lifestyle. And suddenly pre-pandemic, most people are going, actually, that's what we all starting to want. So that group, and it's a very significant group because while the oldest ones are 25, they are starting to come into the workforce. So in terms of management, you've got a workforce with 4, sometimes 5 generations there. Yeah. The addition of this Gen Z workforce brings a double challenge to management. So specifically mid-management had the steepest learning curve during the pandemic because you just were not trained or you didn't have the tools to manage people remotely. Now that we've sort of adapted to that, you've got another force coming in, are the Gen Zs who are very adept at multitasking, at doing all of the things that the other panelists were talking about. And for me, those are the best suited there. So it's not to say that across generations you can't do that, but I think for me, people that are are independent workers that are able to problem solve, work themselves. And so, people are saying if the future of work is going to be more decentralized, then you are going to want that entrepreneur amongst your workforce. Somebody with that entrepreneurial mindset that can work alone, that can make some decisions, but can be part of a team as well, but they are in your company.
I get your point. Do I agree with it? I'm not too sure. Vanessa, I'm coming back to you, and I'm coming back to you to answer my question that I asked you earlier, and then also to contribute to the type of worker that is able to work from home or is suited to work from home.
Sure, and I think I'm going to put it a little bit differently in not putting someone in a box, but what I can say is people want a feeling where they can contribute equally to opportunities, where there's no, there's power in an inclusive environment. So for me, it creates a workplace that unleashes innovation. So when someone is able to contribute in an environment where their thoughts, their ideas are taken into consideration, I think it then creates an environment that's inclusive. So I don't want to necessarily say, it's this particular type of an individual. But what we found is people that is in this type of workforce and the future of work, they want to feel seen. And when I say want to feel seen, what does that really mean? They want to be noticed and they want to have, the full attention given to them. They want to have, they want to be understood. They want to feel safe in this environment of flexibility. And when I say safe, I'm talking about they want to be accepted for who they are. They want to be comfortable when they are able to share their ideas, voice their opinions. They want to make sure that it's okay to make mistakes in this new type of workforce. So that's a feeling of safety. And more importantly around this topic is people want to be connected. They want to feel connected. And it's important for leaders to create that platform where their people can feel connected at all times. So what does feeling connected really mean for individuals across levels, across age groups, etc.? They want to have this connection. They want to have the sense of belonging. And also they want to be inspired to do their best in everything that they do. So I really don't want to say that, it's a particular individual, but if people are feeling that they are seen, that they feel safe, that they feel connected, that they feel courageous, when, they stay true to themselves and really, make this really work, I think, it's to the leaders that, is responsible to create that all-inclusive environment. So I hope I've answered your question, but really it's people wanting to feel this way in this new ways of working.
Yeah, I hear you. I think the argument absolutely makes sense, but at the same time, it complicates the company environment, doesn't it? Because you're trying to build a common culture, you're trying to connect all these people, but at the same time, they also want to operate from where they feel comfortable. Yeah, I'm glad I'm not in HR. Nazim is in HR. Nazim, you've been listening to the contributions. Your thoughts?
I have to agree with both, but perhaps just add another angle to it. Firstly, there's a very practical element to it, right? Certain people cannot work from home. And I think we've got to be mindful of the fact that not everybody has a work from home space, for example. It may not be practical to do that kind of thing. I think that's one element that we take into consideration. Yeah, people may want to work from home, may have the propensity to work from home, but they just don't have the physical space or the practicality of it. So that's one element of it. The other element of it is, I absolutely agree with John when he said that, the emergent workforce is very much, I think that's where the majority of people are going to be that want to have this blended type of work environment. But I think there's pockets of people across the board, people who are happy to work independently. And I'm at the risk of generalizing, people who are maybe introverts who love just sitting in front of a computer and working. So there's elements of those kind of people that we need to take into account as well. But to Vanessa's point, and I think the learning from COVID for us, which I think is actually defining the world of or the future world of work, certainly in what I'm seeing, are three things. One is an element of trust. The second is agility, and the third is autonomy. Now, trust obviously is quite a broad topic. So it's do senior managers trust their employees and the other way around? Do managers trust their direct reports and the other way around? And do teams trust each other within that? So to Vanessa's point, there has to be this element of feeling safe or feeling trusted before you are willing to go and do that kind of thing. And I think critical, and particularly for the emerging workforce, is the sense of autonomy. Am I able to make decisions myself? Am I going to be trusted enough to be able to go out and make my own mistakes and learn from my own mistakes? The desire to move into different things. So that decision making and a sense of being in control of my own work, I think that's going to be critical. So, it really is a minefield. There's so many different elements to consider. And it's one of the reasons we've been very, very cautious about going out and implementing a model as such. We're busy trying to do a lot of homework first, understanding the dynamics. What does a company on its own, what facilities do we have, what facilities do the staff have? There are certain jobs that are more suited for this. For example, your receptionist can't really work from home because she's the face of the organization, especially in our type of, we have students coming in. And then of course there's the propensity to want to work from home and the ability to manage yourself, your time, and the rest of it. So I don't think there's a clear answer to this, Godfrey. Unfortunately, it really is a very complicated issue, but it's something I think we have to deal with. We don't have a choice, to be quite honest.
Yeah, of course, Nazim, where you have got landmines, you have got, or minefields, you have got casualties. There will be casualties. But I wanted to give you an opportunity as well to talk about some work that you have put in around creating a framework on a hybrid type work environment in the higher education sector. Very quickly, if you could just sum up for us the main key themes that you have found there.
Okay, a lot of it is what I've just spoken about. So I haven't done the work yet. I've just submitted a topic proposal to do my PhD on specifically that. So we're part of a group of Pan-African group of universities. So there's 11 universities. And what I'm trying to do is to survey the 11 universities and find out exactly along those lines. So what factors are relevant in the workplace? What factors are relevant in terms of the leadership style? What factors are relevant in the individuals themselves? So, what characteristics, as to the question that you asked just now, and then what factors are relevant from the practical side, the technology side. So, how do we find a model that works best for our environment? And really, I'm trying to develop a framework that we can use internally, and obviously the rest of the universities within our group can use. So, it's very early days. It's a topic that I think it's obviously suited perfectly to the topic that we're talking about now, but perhaps in a year's time or 3 years' time, when the PhD is done, we'll have a better understanding and I can give you more details of what that looks like. I don't know at this stage.
Yeah.
So it's an exploratory investigation.
I was going to say Jill should invite you next year, but then you said 2 years or perhaps in 3 years' time we have the answers to all of those things. Okay, we'll keep you in mind for that. Dion, I want us to talk as well about how we build, how shall we put it, a workplace that respects the work-life balance. And now when I'm saying workplace, I'm meaning that workplace in the home, that workplace in the office as well. How do we build that balance? Because sometimes people need help from themselves.
Yes. I think it was Vanessa that was also saying that there's the blurring of boundaries when you're working from home is really difficult. So I've for the start of my career, the careers I've been a freelancer, so you have a discipline with that. Yeah. But if you're used to a 9 to 5 and if you're used to a location-centric kind of mindset of working, it becomes very, very difficult to separate that. So you need to build in those transition zones. You need to, and I think also what's the pandemic has highlighted, and it has come up because when I say there's been a life audit, what you saw during the pandemic was a reshuffling of priorities in terms of rewards and benefits. So people definitely want the flexibility, but you saw an increase of saying, I possibly want more childcare benefits than I did before. Yeah. And the one thing that has really come up has been wellness and well-being and emotional well-being. And I think that's one of the big pivotal changes in terms of company culture that has really forged ahead, and people are kind of scrabbling. So also if you look demographically, an older workforce would have just sort of let's just shoulder on and push forward. If I go back to sort of Gen Z studies, you start seeing that in very, very different surveys all around the world, the need for the support for emotional well-being is much, much higher. It's like sort of 60% versus 30% in a boomer workforce. So and Vanessa also used the word belong all the time, and I really like it's a tagline advertising tagline that Airbnb uses, but they say belong anywhere. And for me, that is the biggest challenge in terms of management, because your management style has to be very, very different. So you're not quite cracking the whip about sort of project time management. It is about those outputs and results, and also you're starting to look for the intangibles, that emotional well-being. Is there a speak-up culture? Do people feel safe? All of the things that Vanessa mentioned, I think are different priorities that were not priorities pre-pandemic.
Dion, I'm hearing you say that the future work environment is going to become more complex.
Very.
Oh my God. All right. Okay. Let's take in contributions from you who are watching and listening to us from wherever you are around the world. And I'm not too sure this is a question for our session, but let me go through it nevertheless. I am enjoying the presentations, more especially when AI, ChatGPT, and use of technology in general was discussed as far as work is concerned. My question is, as discussed and based on results from literature, it shows that people want to work from anywhere. True. Some people still want to work from the workplace. What about teaching and learning? Do we still need teachers, professors? Because Nazim, ChatGPT is now there to teach, and people can easily get information from the internet.
That's probably our biggest challenge at the moment, is how do we deal with that? I think, and I'm obviously going to say this, I think there's absolutely, we still need people who are able to interact. I think the biggest challenge for us at the moment is how do we now assess people as to whether they understand the content? Because, you can easily go to ChatGPT and get an answer to an assignment. And now with online exams, you can even do it there. So a lot of proctoring type of devices that we're using. It's probably the biggest challenge in education at the moment. I think all education institutions are struggling with it a little bit. But it's also very exciting because it now forces us to change the way we share information and the way we evaluate people's understanding of it. So it almost moves away from the sense of, rote learning. It's very easy to go and learn 10 facts and present that to you. What we're looking at doing is changing the assessment to say, do you actually understand? How do you apply the knowledge that you have? So a lot of our sessions are now moving to master classes. The notes are provided, people can see that, but we're moving to a situation where people are now talking to this kind of thing, webinars. We bring in experts from industry to talk about real life application of some of the learnings. So fascinating time, but I don't think, if anything, it changes the type of educator and type of teacher we need. It doesn't change the number of teachers that we need. I think we need more people.
I can tell you also here, even within our industry in journalism, it's something that we are struggling with, especially in this era of fake news, because you want to say to people what you are seeing is real. And when we write a story, we have written the story because we understand what the issues are and we've put them together. Now, when you get a machine to compress those things and then tell the story as the way the machine sees it, and then you put it out and you put someone's name there, what are we saying? It's really complex. There's no question about it. All right. Dion and Vanessa, please feel free to come in and contribute to some of the points that are coming through. Let me go to the next question. What are companies' approaches or future approaches to training and development in the era of AI? To the point that the workplace dynamic is changing, how well are they adapting their L&D efforts to a more flexible hybrid environment, especially where people do feel that they are unfairly working 24/7? Dion, before we go to Vanessa.
Yes, so just in terms of the skills there, I'm going to just bring in a slightly different angle as well. So I've been beating this drum since 2015, so I get very passionate about this. But we are starting to see, in terms of trends, picking up global trends, where the qualifications, and this is probably going to be a very contentious point here, is they said in the last decade or so, we have fallen into a trap of credentialing or degree inflation. So in terms of HR, you are recruiting people and your requirement is a base degree of 4 years, whereas the job doesn't require that. And from my take of that is you're starting to see the rapid changing of jobs, new type job titles coming through, the nature of jobs, the silos being sort of blurred within companies, hierarchies sort of flattened, all of those kind of things. And you're seeing, a lot of HR practitioners would have the mantra, we hire for attitude and we retrain for skills. So the one stat that I found really devastating was that throughout the pandemic, and the stat was recalibrated at the beginning of this year in January, that 800,000 people with tertiary education and probably postgraduates applied for a 350 Rand grant, the social relief grant in this country. So for me,
I think I remember that story.
something is very, very wrong with that. And if we talked about a different way of looking at diversity and inclusivity, you are starting to see companies and EY UK drop that bombshell in 2015, and they said we don't have those degree requirements anymore because we want a more diverse workforce and a pool in which to look at things. So just quickly, I lean towards what the World Economic Forum is proposing, and they've got a big push to try and create skills and jobs by 2030 or so, and they are introducing the concept of micro-credentials. So these are short courses that flattens the, where it's inequality financially to be able to do the courses, the time, the condense of the time to be able to skill people, and to have those hybrid skills, which I mentioned before, are going to be more wanted because you want that entrepreneur mindset in a company. So it is a very contentious point, but I'm adamant that that's where we're going.
I think I would tend to agree with that one. I certainly think that forcing people to go through 3, 4, 5 years of education and then bringing them into an environment when perhaps even the skills that they've learned are not adequate, you are definitely going to get inequalities continuing. Vanessa, please come in. Many points spoken. Pick up from where you want.
So I think to the point around investing in development around specific targeted programs, I think, staying up and staying relevant in terms of what is the most relevant skills that is required in the respective, job communities is important. So as an employee across any type of market, across any level, I think it's important for the individual to understand, that they need to be relevant, not only for today, but for tomorrow. And for that, it's important that, automation and technology changes are reshaping job requirements. So in terms of, the more admin type of skills is not necessarily required anymore. So people really need to understand what is the skill they need to upskill in. And organizations and companies are really taking a strong stance around development of their people in terms of training for what's required in the future. So I think it's important for people to stay relevant in their respective industries. Investing and reskilling and upskilling the workforce is one of the main talent agendas that organizations are focused on. Definitely Accenture, in terms of how we invest, how we reskill, how we upskill our people is so important. And we talk about, administration skills being offshored, etc. It's so important for people to stay relevant and understand what is the next growth engine in terms of the future in order to be relevant and to stay abreast of technology as well as the necessary skills.
The EY example that Dion is talking about, how likely is it, do you think, that other companies, other organizations could adopt that? I don't know at Accenture if it's something that you have looked at as well.
We have certainly looked at, and also comment on some of our competitors and in the clients in the industries that they've done that too. And it's also a form of retention of key talent in terms of how do we want to spend our money in terms of developing our people, and through the development of our people and upskilling with the necessary skills of the future. It's a form of engagement and retention of our people. If people feel that they are learning and developing, they are engaged. we don't want a workforce that is disengaged or actively engaged, to make it matters even worse. So for us, engagement and retention is very, very important, and that plays predominantly around what are we doing to make sure that we are upskilling and developing our people.
And Nazim, it sounds like a challenge to your industry, doesn't it? We don't need your degrees. We'll do short courses like the World Economic Forum is suggesting, and we will make you obsolete.
No, you won't. We're absolutely thinking about it. So, yes, whilst I agree, Dion is absolutely right, and he's the expert in terms of trends. I think the worldwide trend is moving that way. In South Africa, maybe it hasn't quite got there yet, for a couple of reasons. One is the regulatory authorities haven't latched onto this idea completely. So remember, we're quite a regulated industry. So we've got degrees and all of those kind of things. There's this aura around all of that still exists largely. And I think a lot of companies, Vanessa is right, a lot of people are starting to think about it, but very few are now actually applying that. We still get requests regularly. People want to see your CV. What degree have you had? Remember, 87% of our students are actually working. So we have a largely adult population. So the way we're dealing with this is what we call stacking. So yes, we are developing a lot of short programs. Micro-credentialing, if you like, is really the way we want to go. Or we call it badging, for example. So you get a badging for learning EQ, for example. But then you stack all of those together to then build up a module, and you can get a credit for that. There's also recognition of prior learning, because a lot of our students have years of experience. So what we're looking at is to try and get the regulatory authorities to accept that if a person has done a whole lot of micro-credentials, can we then stack that up into a module, and then stack a few modules up into a degree or a diploma or a higher certificate, which is what we're offering. So we're very mindful of it. So what we're trying to do is to balance the two. There's a lot of people who just want the short course and are happy to move on with it, but there are others, and the demand is still extremely strong for degrees and diplomas and the rest.
Agility is going to be demanded out of you, no question about that one. Let's take in another contribution from our audience. Now, what effect does virtual teaching I think they want to say, what effect has the virtual teaching had on students? Our purpose for teaching. Oh, okay. I'm not too sure where that question is going. I'll try and see if I can figure it out. Let's take the next one. How do we balance accelerating and embracing technological advancement, AI, with current challenges of supporting infrastructure? I think this is a general question. Dion, you haven't spoken in a while.
Yes, I think, I lecture a module about the business of innovation, and we always talk about ambidextrous leadership, because I think, every single company is trying to implement new technologies, and of course the pandemic sped that up. So every company is trying to, as I call it, meet the velocity of change, which has just become exponential. So you are trying to keep the ship afloat. You're trying to keep the institutional memory going. Yeah. But yes, you need to implement new. New processes, new things. But I always ask the question to people: you can have ambidextrous leadership, but how often or how important is it to you to review the processes and the operating system of that company? Because what I'm seeing more and more is that we are trying to build a 21st century, new operating systems and new empires on an old foundation. That was born in the 20th century.
And someone gave the example of accountants that was taught in the 1970s, and the module hasn't changed much over the years.
So my analogy is the technology is there around the world. Give or take, we are going into sort of autonomous car technology, and yet in business, if you put it in business terms, we still use a old stick shift manual to try and run, operate, maintain that new car, and it's not going to work. There's different ways of doing things.
100%. Vanessa?
I don't know if I can add any more to what's being said. I think I'm completely aligned to that. In this new way of working, it's important, it's to find that balance, really. But I can't add more to what the speaker before me has said. So well done on that.
Thanks for that. Okay, one other question that has been bubbling in my mind, and I'm going to throw this one to all of you, is the issue around the pace of change that we are seeing with this changing environment, and to what extent what we are ever going to end up with is going to be clear in terms of whether we're going to end up with a 50% or an 80%. I'm stuck on numbers. Workforce working from home, and another perhaps 20% working from an established office. Because we're not talking about things that are happening like we say next year this time we will be here. Do you know what I mean? So I want to understand the pace of that change and where the greatest change is taking place.
So,
and I suspect we'll never get to a landing, are we?
I think we will. So in terms of tracking trends, I've done this for 17 years and I see it over and over again. So you get your sort of kind of first adopters, things happen. So the pandemic.
Where is that? Who are your first adopters?
Well, just say, for example, just the future of work. So we were forced to be first adopters in terms of remote work. Okay. So the pendulum swings to one extreme. So that was the pandemic. We had to work from home. That was all that. It starts swinging back, and then certain companies say, no, we want you all back in the office. There's pushback. You lose some, a really crucial talent, and the pendulum swings back and forth. And I always say to people, it always lands back in the middle.
Yeah.
But the middle that you land back in is not the same middle where it started from.
Right.
There has been, seminal seismic shifts underfoot. All of those things have changed. So you kind of come back to a compromise. Yeah. But the fundamental rules have changed, and I think that's what we're seeing at the moment.
You
generally.
said there's going to be lending. I want to know when that will be and what that scenario is likely to look at. Because the other day I had an interview with the CEO of GrowthPoint, and I asked him the exact question. And my point was, Norbert, you are seeing your offices continue to stand open. Do you think we're ever going to get back to a situation where those offices are going to occupy? And he said, Godfrey, unequivocally, no, we will not. But, of course, when that will be is the question that you'll answer. Vanessa, I wanted your contribution as well in terms of just that pace of change and whether we are likely to end up with a situation where we clear, like we were in the past, you had almost 100% working from an office type, work type environment to now where we don't know.
And I think it's a difficult question because, and again, we don't have one standard answer that's going to suit everyone. We don't have, not one size fits all again. So, and I think, leaders of the future play an important role, especially managers that's leading the workforce. So I think I'm not going to be able to tell you an 80-20 or 50-50, but certainly it's not going back to the normal that we were used to, right? So it's our new normal is this hybrid model, and it's a combination of flexibility depending on people's preferences. And I think more and more, as clients want their people back at the office, it's all about collaboration and it's all about the positive impact around productivity. And again, what's going to make sense going forward around, the flexible collaboration, the communication around, making sure that people are doing their best. So I think it's important that companies need to understand that in order to have an engaged workforce, they need to get to the times, and it's not going to be 100% in office scenario anymore. There's going to be a new norm, and that new norm is based on having that flexibility and having people having their preferences around wherever you work, and having the tools that will be able to support you. And most importantly is to have the leadership that's going to support that change is very important. So I will leave it there.
But is it also true that some industry will be what they are, i.e. there will be need to work from a central point?
Well, of course, and that not one fits all. You're going to have certain types of workforces or certain types of the types of work that's going to allow you not to be working remotely, right? So it's your teachers, your doctors, your practitioners, all of that. But as we go into a more entrepreneurial type of a mindset, those standard and those traditional ways of working or those traditional types of work is not going to be the same anymore. And through the lens of technology, everything is improving, and we are going to get towards more of that flexibility.
So that question was more for my colleagues, because I think here we need to be together. I think the energy that we generate when we are working together and when we sit and we debate ideas is absolutely fantastic. We won't be changing anytime soon. Nazim, if I can come to you, I figured out that question. The person was trying to say, what effect has virtual teaching had on students?
Okay, if I could just touch on the previous point, just to bring change into it a little bit. From the perspective of our staff of people, I think the biggest challenge for us right now is that people are experiencing change out in the real world. So, for example, you can go, quite easy, a simple example, you can go online and fill in a form and do a purchase within a few seconds, and 2 days later your goods are here. Whereas at the work, we've still got manual forms and that sort of thing to fill in. So it's about keeping up with the technology and the expectations and the experiences of people. So I just want to bring that from the teaching, from the perspective of change and staff. To your question, I think it has changed. People got used to, we less impacted by it than others, because we are largely what we call a rich distance learning type of institution, right? So a lot of our teaching has always been done online, but the method of doing it has now changed, as I alluded to a bit earlier. So as opposed to a typical teaching classroom, whether it's face-to-face or online, where you went through the content, people are now expecting you to enrich that content. So we spend a lot of time enhancing it with videos, with activities. So it's a lot more interactive now than it was. And really there's a real drive. Students are expecting that. They want us to show them how they can apply what they've learned, as opposed to going through the notes, which is the old method of doing things. So I think from that perspective, it has impacted us, possibly less at Region, because we were doing this kind of thing in any case long before COVID. COVID obviously accelerated that. And what we're really looking at focusing now is on other immersive experiences. So we bring some students into our iLead lab, for example, where they get to work with 4AI technology and learn about creativity and all of these other things that are latch-ons to the, so if you're doing a BCom, for example, we still require you to come in and learn about creativity and communication and how to deal with people, because a lot of them are done online in any case. So yeah, it's very much a blended type of teaching that we've done, and it's what's being demanded by students anyway.
Thank you, Nazim. Thank you, Nazim. Dion, you're not off the hook. You still need to tell me when that lending is going to be, and I'm going to bring you to the market. So Jerome Powell in the US has been increasing US interest rates because he wants to get inflation down, and the market has coined the phrase around a soft lending or a hard lending. Lately, the conversation has shifted to a no lending. Yes. You said there will be a lending. When would that be?
Yes, I'll try and put it an approximate, but I have been saying to people, specifically leadership that wants to dig their heels in and say we must go back to the old, the old ways, is essentially what you are going to start seeing within, say, like a 2-year period. You are not going to attract the new talent that your company wants and needs, and the senior talent that are there are going to say, I need a different environment to work. So it's going to hurt in terms of recruitment and the talent that you are going to attract within that company. And for me, that is about a 2-year, I'll put that estimation onto the table then.
Dion, I'm going to set up a study group, and we're going to work on this, put our minds to it, and try to figure out the future of our work. We're going to part with a comment that's come through from one of our audience members, and here is the comment. To engage workforce, you need intelligent and well-educated individuals. The question which the panel is not addressing is the person who enters the firm. We do not need hands, and the hands has been made in capital letters. We need thinking individuals. On that, I have to say thank you to the audience for listening and participating and for stimulating the discussion, which is what we're doing here all along, sharing ideas around how we think the future of work is going to be. So please do help me to thank my guests, Nazim Kathrada, Director, Human Capital, Regent Business School in Durban, Dion Chang, trend and analyst and founder of Flux Trends, and Vanessa Gunhuislin, HR Director at Accenture Africa, joining us from Cape Town today. And thank you, Palesa, for listening to all of it.
Certainly was a pleasure, Godfrey. I learned a lot. I do hope that at some point you'll allow us to work from home, although I'm a reporter. And very thanks also to all the speakers who joined us from far and wide for this jam-packed session of invigorating content. I've learned so much from our conversation on innovation and leadership in a rapidly evolving world of work, from technological innovations, leadership, and the influence of artificial intelligence in the workplace, to the intricate push and pull between work and home as the hybrid work model cleaves onto the business environment post the pandemic. We certainly hope that everyone who watched today on CNBC Africa and on the Hop-In webinar can leave this session confident that they can protect their greatest investment, and that is their employees. The CNBC Africa team certainly had a blast today. I hope you did as well. And we hope, or rather, let's continue the conversation on social media where you can share your thoughts and opinions. And of course, the hashtag to use is FOW2023. But for myself, Balisa Mufukeng, and the team, it's goodbye for now.